Welcome, everyone, to the Firing the Man podcast. This is a very special episode. Now, Ken, 18 months ago, when you and I met, you shared a goal with me, and that goal was I want to quit my job, and I want to be a full-time e-commerce professional. And since that time, you have taken several steps to make that happen. And last week, on June 19th was a landmark day. Share with us what happened on June 19th.
Yeah, David, thanks. I'm excited for this show. It's been a long time coming. So last Friday, I left my day job. So like you said, I've been working for that for 18 months, going on 2 years. And yeah, I was able to leave my day job, and it feels absolutely amazing.
All right, so I want to go back and think about that day. So walking into your exit interview, what was going through your mind?
So I thought I would have a lot of fear, and I would be scared, like, oh shit, like what's gonna happen? It was none of that. I was kind of like I was giddy. I was like kind of had this nervous energy, but also a calming, like almost like I was shutting the end of a chapter, right? So I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I was like, take all of my stuff, take everything. I'm done. And when I left, when I walked out, you were there, like captured that, and it literally felt like a ton of bricks were gone off my shoulders. Like that job was a burden to me, right? Like I was not getting anything back from that company, from that job, right? I was trading my time for money, and it was keeping me from doing more for myself and for my family. So yeah, when I left that job, when I walked out that day, I captured some stuff here. I have some stuff written down. I was excited, I was motivated, and I was laser focused when I left. And that captures exactly how I was feeling.
Very nice, very nice. I envisioned the day where I fired the man, and I think that there will probably be a part of me in the back of my head that's saying, what are you doing? You have a really good job. What did you feel any of that? Did you feel any hesitation?
I didn't that day, but leading up to this, I had a really good job. I'm very humble. I worked a long time. I have a degree, of a lot of experience. So it was a 6-figure job. It was very comfortable. And don't get me wrong, I'm very humble to have that. But I had no fear of leaving it that day, because I had prepared myself for 2 years, building my business, building multiple revenue streams. And for the audience listening, David and I are working on a blueprint of this process of what we're going through. And I did all those steps. So I was well prepared. This wasn't a knee jerk, like, oh, I'm just going to quit my job. This was like 18 months of preparation, all of these steps that I went through. So I didn't have that, that fear or any of that.
All right, Ken, you mentioned that you felt very calm that day, and one reason for that was you had a plan in place. Tell us about that plan.
Sure. So, David, I'm going to explain mine, and everybody that's listening, even yourself, everybody is going to be different. So, what worked was I looked at my expenses, and I cut out everything that I didn't need, and I squeezed my expenses down as much as I could. Prior to that, I built 2 diverse revenue streams. So I have 2 businesses, 2 diverse revenue streams, bringing in more cash flow than my day job, right? So in the process, I squeezed my expenses way down and lived on just what I needed, and I paid off nearly all of my debt. Any debt that I could pay off, I did. Another aspect is health insurance. That's something else people are like, oh, well, what about health insurance? What about this? What about that? So I have a plan in place for health insurance, and I had that in place prior to leaving. And all of this stuff that I'm going over is we're developing in our blueprint, right? So those are the main items that I was worried about, or that bubbled up for me. Like, hey, what about how am I going to pay my bills? What about my health insurance? What about this? What about that? So I had a plan that covered all of that stuff, and I think that's that's really what helped me. Kind of now something that also that needs to be talked about is I've surrounded myself with really positive people, and that's really helped in a lot of ways. Like our relationship, this podcast, I've evolved my business from things I've learned from you as an accountant, you as an entrepreneur, things I've learned from people coming on the show, my girlfriend. So prior to me starting a business, I was in a toxic relationship. Now I don't want that to be a negative. That person is not a bad person, but just us together was a toxic relationship. I ended that relationship. The person I'm in a relationship now is super positive. Like she looks at me and says, "You can do anything you want in the world," and like looks at me with a straight face and doesn't laugh. So that's super. It makes a huge impact, right? Whenever my partner says, "Oh, I believe in you," you could go climb Mount Everest if you wanted, and she doesn't, flinch. I'm like, she really believes it. That's very powerful. So surrounding myself with positive people, I, hired a business coach, and several months ago, and that's been massive, right? Like that's been huge to bring someone on. That's, we always talk about it on this show. If you want to get somewhere, find someone that's been there and ask them how they did it, right? It's too easy, but not a lot of people do. I finally said, okay, I'm going to hire a business coach. I don't know how to get there. So that's been huge. It helped me evolve, figure out things I didn't know. So yeah, does that touch on everything, David?
Yeah, absolutely. You had touched on surrounding yourself with positive people, and I think that's a excellent point to make. Tell me about the naysayers, because I know that they exist.
Yeah, there's always going to be haters, and I don't. I have a very small inner circle, so. And I'm not a huge on social media, and that's for a reason. I don't think there's a lot of positive out there. At least my exposure to it is not that experience, right? So I remove negative people from my life. I don't allow them to have my time. So if I constantly see somebody that's negative on any of my social feeds or whatever I do follow or anything, I remove them. Now, you can't remove, everybody. Like if you have a sibling or whatever that's negative, maybe you just limit your time, like exposure. If you protect your time and only allow positive people to have your time, you're going to be a lot better off. We have naysayers for the show. We have naysayers that are always in our life doing everything, but I don't let them have my time. And I would say that, that's pretty powerful.
Absolutely. I know I've run into that in my own life, and in my opinion, you identify the stakeholders that are going to be immediately impacted by you changing your career or changing your profession. So spouse, children, that's it, or partner, children, and everybody else, they don't really have skin in the game. And so they will voice their opinion, but at the end of the day, your decision does not impact them. And so I think it's good the point that you made about limiting your exposure, because I think at the end of the day, we're all human. And when you hear somebody say negative things, yeah, you can try to kind of block it out, but it does get to you. But I think if you limit exposure to people or things like that, then it opens you up for just surrounding yourself with positive people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also add to that, there were people that I worked with, and I said, hey, I'm going to quit. I'm going to go do my own thing. And oh, Ken, why would you do that? Oh, I don't know. What I heard and the naysayers is fear, and to me, I almost felt compassion and like they didn't understand. Can't force someone to understand something, right? What is it? You can take someone to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
horse, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
horse, right?
Yeah, there you go. Or you could take somebody.
Right.
So I want to go back. So pre leaving your job. So we've talked about this 2-year timeline leading up to this day. At what point did you think to yourself, "Hey, this is feasible. I could do this"? And then at what point did you say, "Oh, I definitely am going to do this"? And what helped you turn that corner?
No, that's good. That's really good. So I would say, since I started building my company, almost 2.5 years ago, it's always been the end goal of like, hey, I don't want to work for someone else. I've always wanted to own my own business. So it's always been the goal of building a business and working for myself. But actually putting a strategy together was a different story, right? Like I fumbled around for a year, getting sales and figuring something out. And then, the second year was like, okay, I want to scale this and then let me add these components in. And all the while, the revenue and the profits were increasing, right? So then I'm like, okay, I have to put a plan together. So when I hired my business coach and mentor, he explained, hey, your focus, whatever you focus on is what you're going to accomplish, right? So if you drill into, hey, this is what my goal is of leaving my job, I'm going to put 100% of my focus on leaving my job. So I really just zeroed in my focus. Instead of like, hey, I'm going to build this, $10 million company, I zeroed my focus in on, hey, I'm going to leave my job. And I put a plan together like we talked about, and step by step, I just went through that plan, put it together, and I set a timeline on it. That was really, before I didn't have a timeline. And then in that putting that plan together was a date. And when I first did, I was like, oh shit, like this is real, right? And as I was going through those steps, putting that plan together, I actually left earlier than that time. It was amazing to have that goal, set that time, and then execute all of those steps, and then to hit it ahead of time was completely amazing. So I would say that alone, just making that plan, hiring a business coach, getting that plan, getting dialed in and focused on that goal was huge.
That's cool. Cool. All right. So Ken, one question that anybody who's thinking about firing the man has is, how much money does my company need to generate in order for me to fire the man? And we've talked about it a little bit, but say you're making $100,000 and you build a business that generates net income of $100,000. That probably is not the time to jump off, right?
Right.
Because then you're going to reinvest all your profits into your own salary.
Exactly.
And so from an income standpoint, what were some things that you were thinking about, and what got you comfortable with your final decision to leave?
Great question. So you're absolutely right. So for me, it was, I needed to squeeze my expenses way down, and I needed to live, I don't want to say below my means, but standard, right? So, okay, so David, if you have $100,000 salary and you exit your job and your business was making 100,000 bottom line profit, you can't just take that directly out of your business. So one target would be to have triple what your salary is. So if you're going to extract the equivalent of your salary, you still have, double of that to reinvest into your business.
For sure. That's a metric that I've heard before is the 2 to 3 times what you're currently making. And, you commented on the expense side of things. That's huge. I mean, if you look at your net worth, it's made up of cash inflows, right? So what you make from your company, what you make from your job, then you have cash outflows, and that's all your expenses. And Robert Kiyosaki talks about the person that makes $400,000 and spends $398 every year, and that is not a way to accumulate wealth. And so I'm glad that you kind of touched on both sides of this. The expense side, as one, you tighten down your expenses, but two, on the cash inflow side, and replacing your salary, 3 times over.
Right. Yeah. I think it takes a lot of different angles to cover that, and it is different for everyone, right? And the blueprint that we're designing and developing, we'll cover lots of different ranges, but getting so far down in the weeds with everyone, it's difficult because situations are different. But I like that overarching strategy of triple your income, and then you can grow your business.
For sure. Now, when I think of my own situation, where I am still full-time employed, when I think about firing the man, if I'm being totally honest, I have a little bit of fear. I'm scared. I've never done it before. What were some ways that you've dealt with the fear of firing the man?
Absolutely. No, that's great. And the months leading up to me, quitting my job was, I'm not going to lie, there was fear that crept in, right? And one thing that's been really, really powerful for me to think about is, and I want to give credit to Scott Volger. I believe I heard from him. It was, at the end of the day, I'm going to build a business and leave my day job and work for myself, and I'm going to give it 100% of my effort, right? So if you are able to build a business and exit your day job, you're doing pretty well, right? You have a lot of momentum. And at the end of the day, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? Like, at the end of the day, the worst thing that's going to happen is you would have to go back and work and get a job. So for me to think all these fears, like, sky's going to fall on me, my life's going to be over, and all these fears. And if I think about it, the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to have to go back and get a job. That's not that bad.
That is a really good point. And I think, your worst case scenario is you end up where you're at right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's not that bad when you frame it that way.
And I'll go one step further. And one of the steps that I did before I left my day job was I saved up 12 months of expenses. So I have a savings, I have a liquid cash, 12 months. I could live 12 months with nothing. So if something came through today, if a triple pandemic came through and wiped out everything that I have 12 months to get something going again, right? I can survive 12 months, get something going again, or I go back and get a job. So there's like layers. You can layer it up. So the more layers that you have really will take that fear away. So, but yeah, I did have the fear coming in, and those are the ways that I mitigated that. I kind of got rid of the fear.
So Ken, what was your communication with your bosses leading up to you leaving your job?
Sure. So my direct bosses, great guys, right? Great people. So the years leading up to me, so 3 years ago, the corporation I work for, I'm not going to mention the name, but a large corporation, and they've went through a lot of mergers and acquisitions, bought some companies, and it's a shit show. They're trying to level out pay and whatever they're doing. Regardless, so the last 3 years, I did not get a raise. So it burned me, I worked my ass off all year, and my boss, I sat across the table from him, and he slid over my performance review, and I got a 9 out of 10 and no raise. I'm like, what's this? How is this possible? How did I work my ass off all year, no raise? And I thanked my leadership team for doing that. They did that 3 years in a row. That first year, that impacted me so heavy that I went out and started a business. I was like, this is not going to happen. Not on my watch. So, that motivated me. That was one of the biggest things that motivated me was I need to control my own pay, not them. I'm not going to look across the table at my boss and he's not going to give me a raise because the shareholders needed more profits. No, bullshit, not on my watch. So that was huge. So I thank them for that.
Yeah, I think so many people can relate to that. I think if you've worked just ever, there are periods of time where you feel like you're being underpaid, where the amount of effort that you're putting forth to a company is not being rewarded in a monetary sense. And, there are two types of people. There are people that will complain about that for 40 years, and then they'll retire with that same corporation and get their gold watch and go into retirement. Or there are people that will say, listen, this bothers me. I'm not going to stand for it. And I'm going to decide how much my time is worth. I'm sick of showing up to a performance review once a year and having some schmo tell me, hey, here's how much your time is worth next year. And so I think it's admirable. It's admirable. And I think it's really cool that you did thank them because, had you gotten a 5% bump in pay, we may not be sitting here. We may not have a podcast called Fire the Man. And so I think that's really neat. So Ken, a year ago, we decided to start a podcast called Fire the Man. At that time, we both had full-time jobs. You have now fired the man. And I'll say, as a co-host, that's a tall order, right? And so I just wanted to say congratulations on this. This is a huge step, and you're really putting your money where your mouth is and taking action. I think it's so admirable and so cool. And you also know what this means. I need to fire the man. And so I have learned from you the process that you described in this episode and the process that we're going to talk about in our blueprint. That's something that I am implementing right now. And we'll see when the time comes, but just wanted to tip my hat to you and say congratulations. For sure. Thanks everyone for tuning in.